Victor Wembanyama entered the NBA with a level of attention no young player had received since LeBron James.
Victor Wembanyama is the singular greatest prospect in NBA draft history.
Many evaluators even called him the greatest prospect basketball had ever produced, standing 7'4" with a wingspan close to 8 feet. Along with the ball skills and shot creation of a guard, he looked like a player the game had never truly had before. In France, he won MVP, earned Defensive Player of the Year, and led his league in both points and blocks while still a teenager. Hype that big usually needs years to prove itself, but Wembanyama sped past that process. In his first NBA season, he led the league in blocks, made first-team All-Defense, and won Rookie of the Year without a single dissenting vote. In Season 2, he was already seen as a star. By year 3, he ended San Antonio's 6-year playoff drought with a game, winning fadeaway against Phoenix, and helped carry the Spurs back to the postseason. By then, the conversation had moved far beyond upside. People were talking about MVP awards, championships, dynasties, and whether he might eventually belong in the greatest ever discussion. That is what it looks like when a player does not just match the expectations but clearly rises above them. The reason his hype always felt different is that it began long before he reached the NBA. LeBron had national television, games in high school. Zion Williamson filled college arenas. Anthony Davis came into the draft as a clear franchise cornerstone. But with Wembanyama, the noise started while he was still a teenager in Europe facing grown professionals. Even when his basic stat line did not look huge at first, scouts understood what it meant. He averaged under 10 points per game, but he was playing only about 18 minutes a night. Once that production was stretched to starter-level minutes, it looked closer to 18 points, 10 rebounds, and over 3 blocks per game. Even then, the numbers alone did not explain the excitement. What really stunned people was how he played. Someone that tall was not supposed to pull up from 3, hit step backs, erase shots at the rim, then dribble the ball up the court on the next possession. Teams had tracked him since he was around 15, and by the time he turned 18, many front offices were already treating the 2023 draft as a race for one name. When he took over at the FIBA level in 2021, including an 8-block game against Team USA, calling him a once-in-a-generation talent no longer felt like overstatement.
I'm really glad he said that because I didn't like to be called a unicorn.
Kevin Durant said the league was in trouble. Giannis said he had never seen anyone like him. LeBron called him an alien. By the time draft night arrived in 2023, everyone understood how much was on the line. San Antonio won the lottery, and that mattered because the Spurs had already turned top picks like David Robinson and Tim Duncan into legends. Even so, hype alone does not guarantee immediate NBA success. The league is quicker, tougher, and much less forgiving than any level below it, and the Spurs were still one of the youngest teams in the league. They were not designed to win right away, and the pieces around him kept shifting. His first game against Dallas was decent but not eye-opening, with 15 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Then things changed in a hurry. About a week later, he scored 38 points with 10 rebounds against Phoenix, joining LeBron James and Kevin Durant as one of the only teenagers ever with 35 points, 10 rebounds, and multiple blocks in a game. Soon after, he had an 8-block night against Memphis, something only Robinson and Duncan had done before as rookie Spurs big men. In December, he posted 21 points and 20 rebounds against Chicago and became the youngest player ever with a 20 game. By the middle of the year, the distance between him and every other rookie was clear. He was putting up over 20 points, around 10 rebounds, and more than 3 blocks per night. He finished his rookie season at 3.6 blocks per game, making him the youngest player ever to lead the NBA in that stat. What made it even crazier was the way he did it. He was blocking jumpers without even leaving the floor, moving from the paint to the corner in what looked like a single step, hitting step-back threes like a guard, despite being 7'4". Later in the year, he had a triple-double with blocks, a 5x5 game, and became the first rookie ever with back-to-back games of at least 25 points.
Center was as good as advertised, putting up rookie numbers the league hasn't seen since Shaq's first season back in 1999.
10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 blocks. He dropped 40 points, 20 rebounds, and 7 assists against the Knicks, then closed the season as the first player in NBA history with at least 1,500 points.
But it's going to take time, and that's just the way it is. Everything is a process.
Yeah.
In the end, as long as he stays healthy, as long as those feet stay healthy.
250 blocks and 100 made.
That's not an 18, 19-year-old.
Yeah.
That dude is a grown man.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
He's a grown man the way he carries himself.
Threes in 1 year. Not the first rookie. It's the first player ever. He won Rookie of the Year unanimously, made all defensive first team, and finished second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Even though San Antonio won only 22 games, the conversation had already shifted. People were no longer asking if he could justify the hype. They were asking how soon the rest of the league would have to face this level of impact every night. That answer came fast. In his second season, opponents began changing their approach. They sent extra defenders earlier, played him with more force inside, and tried to push him into harder jumpers. For a brief stretch, it seemed like those ideas might work. Then, on October 31st, he delivered his second career 5x5 with 25 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, 5 steals, and 5 blocks. Only Hakeem Olajuwon and Andrei Kirilenko had ever done that more than once. A few games later, he put up 24 points, 13 rebounds, and 9 blocks against the Clippers. In the middle of November, he exploded for 50 points against Washington, made 8 threes, and became one of the youngest players ever to reach that total. His scoring kept climbing, his efficiency got better, and his defense stayed absurd. By December, he was leading the league in blocks again, and teams were all ready, changing entire possessions simply because he was on the court. Shots that usually fell at the rim dropped off badly when he challenged them. Guards hesitated, bigs rushed, and some players flat out turned away instead of testing him.
After All-Star break, Victor felt his arm didn't feel completely normal. That was articulated to our medical staff. They looked into it, and that's how we got here.
The advanced metrics supported it too, with him on the floor. The Spurs looked like a playoff-level team. Without him, they looked like one of the league's worst. The monster performances kept coming. Against Portland, he finished with 30 points and 10 blocks, becoming the youngest player ever to do that. He also became the first player in NBA history to hit 4 threes and block 10 shots in the same game. On Christmas Day, he had 42 points and 18 rebounds against the Knicks. Then, in February, the season changed without warning. The Spurs shut him down after doctors discovered a blood clot in his shoulder, ending his year after 46 games. Yet somehow that did nothing to cool the excitement around him. By year 3, San Antonio finally looked more structured on offense, instead of treating every game like a development exercise.
Wemby is a problem. Yeah. When I say I'm the best two-way player in the league, it's not counting Wemby. Like, Wemby don't count. He's not even human. I'm the best human player.
With players such as De'Aaron Fox, Stephen Castle, and Devin Vassell around him, Wembanyama no longer had to carry every part of the load by himself. The Spurs started putting him in stronger positions to control games rather than asking him to solve everything alone. Before the season even began, he spent 10 days at the Shaolin Monastery in China working on balance, flexibility, and control of his body. From opening night, the difference was clear. Against Dallas, he put up 40 points, 15 rebounds, and 3 blocks, setting a new Spurs record for most points in a season opener and breaking a mark that had lasted since George Gervin. Later, he produced a stat line no player in league history.
We know it's not going to be an open shot most of the time, so it's pretty straightforward. You want to shoot it as close to the 1 or 2 seconds. This way we have a chance to get offensive rebound in case of a miss, and in case of a make, they don't have time.
Had ever reached before with at least 35 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 blocks, and 5 made threes in one game. The crazy part was that it no longer even felt shocking. Throughout the season, he stayed around 24 points.
He deserves it. He deserves his flowers. He deserves it. He's playing at that type of level. He's been our guy on and off the court. Victor Wembanyama, MVP.
Double-digit rebounds and roughly 3 blocks per game. once again leading the league in blocks while anchoring a defense that fell apart whenever he sat. He already had several 40-point games, including one where he scored 37.5 in under 30 minutes. But the biggest moment came late in the year against Phoenix. The Spurs were down by 1 in a close game. The crowd was full and fewer than 11 seconds remained. San Antonio cleared the side and let him go one-on-one. One dribble, fadeaway jumper, 1.1 seconds left, game over. He finished with 34 points and 12 rebounds. And that shot sent the Spurs to the playoffs for the first time in 6 years. Afterward, he broke down the play like a veteran, saying he wanted to shoot as close to the final second as possible, so the Spurs could still chase an offensive rebound if he missed, and the Suns would have no time if he made it. That sounded like the answer of a seasoned star, not a 21-year-old in his 3rd season. The Spurs had gone 22 since February.
The conditioning. I saw the brother go to the free throw line. He looked like he had a belly.
One of the best runs in the league. And suddenly, the rebuild no longer felt like a rebuild. It felt like a team that had found its franchise superstar. Part of what makes Wembanyama's rise feel so strange is that history says these stories almost never unfold exactly the way people imagine. Every few years, the NBA convinces itself it is watching the next all-time great arrive. Since 2000, only a small number of prospects carried hype at this level, including LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, Andrew Wiggins, Greg Oden, and Derrick Rose. Almost all of those stories took an unexpected path. Sometimes the talent was undeniable, but the body did not hold up. Greg Oden went 1st overall in 2007, ahead of Kevin Durant, after averaging 15.7 points, 9.6 rebounds, and 3.3 blocks at Ohio State, and many scouts viewed him as the best center prospect since Tim Duncan. He was expected to lead a franchise for years, but injuries held him to only 105 NBA games. Zion Williamson looked unstoppable at Duke, averaging 22.6 points on 68% shooting and sweeping the major National Player of the Year awards. When healthy, he has still looked dominant early in his NBA career, but injuries and conditioning problems have kept him off the floor much more than expected. Derrick Rose may be the sharpest reminder of how quickly everything can change. He won Rookie of the Year, then in his 3rd season, averaged 25 points and 7.7 assists. Led Chicago to the league's best record and became the youngest MVP in NBA history at age 22. It looked like the start of a dynasty until the ACL tear in 2012 changed everything. In other cases, the player became excellent, just not quite what people had imagined. Andrew Wiggins was called the next LeBron before he even played at Kansas. He went 1st overall in 2014, won Rookie of the Year, averaged nearly 20 points per game over 6 straight seasons, became an All-Star, and won a championship with Golden State. That is a very strong career by most standards. But when the expectation starts at future all-time great, even very good can somehow feel like a letdown. There is really only one recent case where the hype is this huge, and the player still managed to go beyond it, and that is LeBron James. Before he played a single NBA game, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as the chosen one. His high school games were shown across the country, and people were already calling him the future of basketball at 17. Even that somehow ended, underselling what he became. 4 MVPs, multiple championships, and the all-time scoring record later, LeBron stands by himself. That is why Wembanyama feels so extreme. The start of his career looks closer to LeBron's than to anyone else's, and LeBron is already part of the greatest ever debate that naturally leads to the question of where Wembanyama could one day rank. Right now, his path looks almost unreal. He wins more than 80% of his jump balls, easily the top mark in the league. He blocks shots with either hand, closes out on threes, protects the rim, and switches onto guards in the same possession. That kind of mix barely existed 10 years ago, and still barely exists today. It is hard to think of any stat model that fully captures how much he changes a defense from one possession to the next. Everything looks different when he is out there. He is only 21, just past 100 NBA games, still adding strength, and still learning the small details of the game. And that is what makes all of this feel even wilder. It does not feel like the end of the story. It does not even feel like the middle of it. San Antonio selected Wembanyama first overall in 2023 after winning only 22 games. And instead of rushing into a win-now push, the Spurs stayed patient. They kept their young core, protected their draft flexibility, and built around him one step at a time. Devin Vassell developed into a dependable scorer. Keldon Johnson adjusted to a smaller role that made the lineup fit better. Stephen Castle and Dylan Harper added more size and playmaking in the backcourt. De'Aaron Fox brought speed and shot creation. The roster is still not complete, and that is exactly what makes Wembanyama's beginning so rare. The NBA has seen superstars, MVPs, and players who defined whole eras. But a 7'4" player who can protect the rim like a center, switch onto guards, shoot from deep, handle the ball, carry a defense almost alone is something else entirely. No, he has not won an MVP or a title yet, and he has not built the long career that the all-time greats have. Injury concerns are still real, especially for someone his size. But through his first few seasons, the pressure has not cracked him, and the expectations have not been too heavy. If anything, they may have been too small. Because if this is only the start, and San Antonio is still building, while he is still getting better, then the rest of the league may have to deal with this for a very long time. And if everything keeps moving in this direction, we may be watching the opening chapters of a career that could eventually belong in the GOAT conversation